Hey everyone, my name is Zack Esgar with the Smarter Church Communications Podcast. Today we have Aaron Talbot, one of my good friends from my church camp days back in college. We had a lot of fun being church camp leaders at a church camp that we used to work at together. He has been in ministry, in student ministry, in different roles at a few different churches in Georgia, and we're so excited to have him on the podcast today. But wanted to give you a second, Aaron. Tell us a little bit about you and what you do at your church.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to be here and honored to be asked to just have a neat conversation with an old friend. So, thank you for the opportunity to come and hang out for a few minutes. Yeah, like you said, I'm located in Evans, Georgia, which is real close to Augusta. And my current role, I'm pastor to students. And so I lead our middle and high school ministry and then also preach occasionally Sunday mornings, and you know other duties as assigned. But have been here for 7 years. So started here in 2017 and here now, and I love it. Love our church. Love our leaders. Love our students and their families, and really enjoy waking up every morning and coming here and doing fulfilling work and enjoy pointing people toward Jesus and helping them in their discipleship.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Now, for podcast listeners, Aaron and I were at a church camp in Colorado that was so beautiful. I remember when we were church camp counselors, it was so much fun just to be in the mountains, helping people experience God and see His beauty. I remember just like being on hikes and just like having some of the greatest discipleship discussions with our kids and also just with Aaron. And so in that, like I don't even know at that time if I knew that you were thinking about going into ministry or if that was even on your radar. Tell us a little bit, like, how did you feel like God called you into ministry and what did that process look like for you?
Yeah, I at the time, I think that maybe you and I were similar. I'm going to make an assumption, but maybe you and I were similar in that we always knew that we would be in ministry, but maybe not career ministry. At least I had that feeling. Like I know church is going to be something really important for me, but how that actually played out, I wasn't really positive and didn't really know until kind of toward the tail end of college, when a couple of things happened, lined up, God's grace on my life, and used some people to help kind of push me in that direction. And grateful for those people, but formative things like camp and hanging out with you and being able to lead and work on leadership in a place where we can also think about our own discipleship. I think was a pretty important part of that. And then also having the opportunity to break through the door of a church and learn a lot in those couple first jobs in ministry. I think were really important and formative to help point me in the direction of pastoral ministry, leading students, leading parents, um, and and so yeah, I think all those things helped to bring us to where we are today. And for all those things, really great. Even the bad things, man. Like ministry's a grind. It's not something that when you show up, it's not something where everything always works out and everything goes to plan. And a lot of days are not like that. And I think that we learn a lot, even this. We learn a lot even when we have days like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, maybe even fast forward that into youth ministry now and being a youth pastor for so long. How have you seen God develop you as a leader? And also, like in leadership development, I know that's a big part of any ministry is growing leaders. But how do you feel like you've seen God really grow you as a leader in youth ministry and also how He's used you to help grow leaders at your church? What's really worked well? What have you really seen over your last 7 years that's been going well for you in your own development and helping grow other leaders?
Yeah. So a couple of things that come to mind first. This is my 15th year in career student ministry. So I think that that's significant. Not that I'm saying that it's been a long time, but that I've had a lot of time to watch other people and to learn more about myself. And the first thing that comes to mind for me is I've had an opportunity to work at a small, it was a large church in a small town, but then to come to a large church in a large town. In my first real career student ministry position, uh, I put a lot of pressure on myself to be able to do everything. Like I felt like, well, if this needs to be done, well, this is my job and it's my responsibility. So that means I have to do it. And then I became a person that had a hard time delegating or asking for help or asking for wisdom or just asking for accountability. Um, and I think that I learned a lot of hard lessons in that church and in that position. And fast forward to where I am now, we've built out a really incredible team of people, high capacity, high achieving volunteers and people who I really moved from having to be the person that does everything to now trying to give as many things away as I can, so that I can focus on the things that only I can do. And that's been an incredible blessing. It's very difficult. I know we haven't been around each other in a long time, but I am a control freak. I very much want to be in control of as much as I can, and that's a flaw, and I have to ask forgiveness for that a lot. But um, I've really tried to work against trying to be involved in everything and to do everything. And if you can give it away, try to give it away. Because you really, if you don't give it away, I think that in some ways you're robbing people of an opportunity to learn a little bit about leadership and to have an expanded role and to have some more responsibility. And a lot of people grow when you say, "Hey, I think that you might be able to help us in this particular way," and I really think that you have some gifts that I don't have, and I'd like to see if you would, step in here or do this thing or lead this thing, and I'll help you and I'll be alongside you, but eventually I want you to take it and go with it, and so that has been, I think, one of those things that I've learned over 15 years that I have to continually do. And the other thing is that I think I've turned into a recruiter. That's been a really big part of my
Mm.
job is recruiting over the long haul, not recruiting out of desperation because you need good volunteers or leaders. It's recruiting for the future, knowing that every year I'm going to have a little bit of turnover in my teams. And because I know I'm going to have a little bit of
Yeah.
turnover in my teams, I always have to be like courting almost like, that very first conversation. Hey, did you ever think about working with teenagers? Did you ever think about being a volunteer, door greeter? Have you ever thought about that? Well, I think you'd be great. And maybe sometime we can go to coffee and we can talk about it. But I just want you to know that I see you and I think that you'd be really great at XYZ job, whatever it is. And then a few months later, hey, you've been thinking about that? I've been thinking about you a lot, and maybe we need to have a conversation. And then a couple of weeks later, hey, when are you ready to get some lunch? Or, a couple of weeks later, you have that lunch, and then you kind of put it before them, and they've warmed up to it. And we have a couple of step process that we use to onboard leaders, and that's all part of that. But recruiting has been one of the biggest things that I have concentrated on in the last 5 to 6 years to make sure that when we have
That's
turnover and we have people
awesome.
that move away and
That
leave, we've got people coming in.
that is so cool. I think just to pause right there for a second, because I think that's huge. Just perspective shift in recruiting for your future need instead of just asking for volunteers out of desperation. Because I think so often the person you're talking to can see right through it. It's like you just desperately need somebody to help cook a meal for a Tuesday night youth group or
Yeah,
something like that, and
right.
they see the desperation in your ask and in you asking for them, and it feels like they're walking into chaos. It's like, why would I want to volunteer when it seems like this is chaos that I'm being asked to come into? But what you just painted a picture of, I think, is huge for anybody in ministry, whether you're a youth pastor or anywhere on staff or even as a volunteer in a ministry. It's like we want to be recruiting and having those I see in you conversations like we see all throughout Scripture, where we come to people and we encourage them in their giftings and who they are, and we work with them in the long term of what's going to be the best fit for them and the best fit for your ministry in the long term. But I think what you said there is huge, because I think I missed that a lot in college ministry. I would try and recruit for the right now and the immediate, the
Yeah.
emergency need, and I would get said no. And I think the other thing that I was encouraged by that you just said is to continue that conversation, even if they say no the first time, or if it, and you might not even ask for a yes or no that first time. It might just be slowly having those I see in you conversations, warming them up, getting to know them maybe even a little deeper and see what the best fit might be. But I think that's huge, because I think I missed that a lot, and I would get a no right off the bat, or it wasn't the right fit. And I wouldn't continue to have those conversations with some potential volunteers. So I think that's huge, and a change of perspective I think could really help you get more leaders in your ministry.
Anytime you ask out of desperation, your body language and your tone is different, right? Like, think about when you interview for a job. If you interview for a job and you currently don't have a job, and you need a job, you'll pretty much say anything to have a job, right? And so when you're asking for volunteers out of
Right.
desperation, you'll say anything to get leaders. And sometimes that means you don't end up recruiting the best leaders for the job or the position that you need. And so, yeah, that's why having an elongated system with steps. And also, when you have an elongated system with steps and procedures for onboarding people, you can also kind of gatekeep when you have people who don't need to be volunteering for the thing or position that you're recruiting for. You can make that on ramp as long as it needs to be, and to
Mm-hmm.
deflect them or to pivot them into another direction. So having something in place that guides your steps in your conversations helps you. And the reverse is true too. I suppose you could make that on ramp as short as you can, so that if you really do need somebody quickly, you can make that on ramp real short. You can get that lunch, and you can sign those forms, and you can do that background check, and you can have your first night.
Aaron, it was awesome getting to hear your ministry insights and delegating leadership, empowering leaders, growing leaders. If you're a youth pastor, a volunteer, if you are a leader in ministry in any way, shape, or form, we want to help equip you and help you for the long term of ministry and pouring into others. I hope you glean some wisdom from Aaron and mine's conversation today. If you'd like to reach out to Aaron, give us a shout in the comments. We'd love to connect you with him. I know he's got a lot of wisdom, and he'd love to lead and guide and help anyone that he can. But thank you, Aaron, so much for joining us on the podcast today, and look forward to catching up some more.